In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Nice to see you all. Pleasure to be here. You seem to have an amazing series of topics. Like I've not seen other groups tackle these issues head on. So that's really, really good. And I think people will specifically come because they have an interest in these type of topics. So well done for whoever gave the feedback and whoever put these topics together. I'm really impressed. Today, as Abuna said, is on self-awareness in the context of relationships. So I hope that this can become more of a discussion because I have some case scenarios or examples that we can discuss. Some are longer than others. Others are just like, here it is, and let's take the learning points and move on. But do please interrupt me if you need to say something, or you want to add something, you want to bring in your experience when it comes to self-awareness and self-reflection. So feel free. So the path to self-reflection. Becoming more self-aware. So first of all, how do you define self-awareness? Here is a definition. Self-awareness is the conscious knowledge, is something that I am aware of that has to do with my own character, feelings, what my thoughts might be, my behavior. I am aware of my behavior. I know what my actions are, and I know also of my motives and my desires in the experience of a relationship. So it involves understanding of one's own strengths. And you go to an interview, people ask you straight up, what are your strengths? What can you say about yourself? And what are the areas of development, areas of improvement? So weaknesses, thoughts, beliefs, motivation, and emotions. So it also means being aware of how these internal states do impact the way you interact with others. Who are you when you are with someone else? Who are you at work? Who are you at church? Who are you with someone you're comfortable with? And who are you with someone you're not comfortable with? And also with the environment, an easy environment to mix in and mingle and connect, and another one that maybe not as warm, a little bit cold. Who are you? Self-awareness is intentional. So you cannot become aware of yourself haphazardly. You may be aware of things here and there, but to be self-aware is an intentional act. It is something that requires self-reflection. The means to self-awareness is self-reflection. So this is something very well, anchored and entrenched in our teaching in the church. Self-reflection. What's another word for self-reflection that we use in the church? Meditation. Quiet time. Sit down, be in a quiet place, reflect in the presence of God. Meditate on your actions, meditate on the Word of God and what it reveals about you. Okay? So, why is self-awareness in relationship important? Well, for one thing, it actually facilitates communication. When you are aware of your feelings and your thoughts, being assertive is a skill, as we say. The skill of assertiveness is my ability to, one, be aware of what's going on within me in terms of how I feel and what I'm thinking, and be able to express that to someone else in a civil way, in a kind and civil yet clear way. But it has to do with you being aware. What type of words will you say about your thoughts and feelings if you're not aware of them? So one is to be aware, two is to be able to express them. So it facilitates clear communication. Being self-aware will enable you as an individual to communicate your needs. Often we find that couples, they avoid talking about what's actually going on because they're either too scared to upset the person they're getting to know, or they don't want to kind of ruin the relationship, so they avoid, or because they're ashamed of themselves or their thoughts or ideas. Whereas when you become self-aware and you do that through self-reflection, that helps you to communicate better what you need, what you desire, and your concerns are made known to you, so you can convey them more clearly. and it reduces misunderstandings and conflict in relationships. Because sometimes in a relationship, when you get to know someone, something happens that triggers you, but you're not aware of the trigger because you're not aware of yourself. And so you put it on the person. You say, you made me upset. You always do this. When it actually is not them per se, it has to do with like a button that is found in you, but you're not aware of it. So you project it on someone else. It also promotes emotional intelligence. So self-aware individuals are more likely to understand and manage their feelings. Emotional intelligence is all about how you become aware and you manage your emotions. So you become more emotionally stable and aware. So you're able to read the room, like they say. It's not that something is happening around you and you're oblivious to it. Not only around you, but within you. So it enhances empathy. Of course, if you become self-aware or more self-aware, you understand what's going on inside of you that someone else is not aware of. And that opens up the door of you empathizing with other people who also may be going through stuff that no one else is aware of. So it gives you that edge of drawing people out. Well, what happened? Well, you became aware of yourself, you became aware of something about you, and guess what? As similar species, we share a lot of that. So then you can be open to other people. You find that a lot of therapists, when they actually go through and become counselors, many of them come from a background of either difficulties or trauma, something that draw them to therapy, right? Those are some of the most empathetic therapists. Why? Because they've been there. They're aware of that. They're in touch with that and they managed it. Also, another important thing about self-awareness is it supports growth. That's self-explanatory. The more you're aware of the areas of improvement or where you want, what's going on with you, the more you're able to kind of set a plan to develop and to grow. It improves conflict resolution, which comes obviously with communication, fosters independence and interdependence. So it encourages a balance between being independent, knowing where your boundaries are and where you need to kind of confine to those boundaries, and where it would be healthy to actually lean on someone or be able to ask for help. You're aware that you need support and you're not ashamed of that. Or when you are ashamed of that, you're aware you're ashamed of that. So you're able to manage that. Okay? It also is important, self-awareness is important because it encourages authenticity. Knowing yourself would lead to more authenticity in your relationships. Because as individuals, we are more likely to act in accordance with our true selves, especially when the relationship is prolonged. You know, first few months, probably it's not fully you, it's not fully them. But after that, the real you comes out, right? And your triggers are being, more active than they were in the first, what we call the honeymoon phase of a relationship. So being aware of that will also make you a more authentic person. And it prevents, as I said, projecting issues onto others, especially your anger. Usually people who are angry outwardly, they're actually first angry inwardly. And being able to discover that about you, what makes you angry, will actually help you in resolving a lot of conflicts that we project onto others when it actually stems and starts with us. So let's talk about then the means of self-awareness, which is self-reflection. As I said earlier, self-reflection is the mean or a mean of becoming more self-aware. We talked about why it's important. Now, let's talk about why self-reflection is important. We know self-awareness is important. Why self-reflection is important? A couple of things. But I found this important to put here is it helps you form a self-concept. Have you heard the word self-concept before? Anyone? What's self-concept important for? When you say, I have developed a good self-confidence, because of my reflection, I have a self concept. What's that? It's center of, what is the sense? A sense of self. Thank you. And what's another word when we say a sense of self? What would be the question to ask someone? When you're asking someone says, oh, this is a sense of who I am. What is the question?
Who are you?
Who are you? Therefore, a self-concept is very much connected to identity. Well, how do you know who you are? Well, I tell you, first you know who you are from what people tell you who you are. Right? People grow in families where you're always, the cute little boy, or you're always the whining girl, or you're always the... So you kind of develop a self-concept first from whom? From your parents, from the environment, right? We grow up in an environment where society, it's, let's say, against your values. So you grow to know that part of your self-concept is that you are not cool, for example, or you're not this, or you're not that. But then you do self-reflection, and you may discover something about your sense of self, of who you are and identity that was neglected because of all the stuff that people, labels, that people keep putting on you and on others. And you know what? In relationship, how do you decide whether you should go and talk to the guy over here or the girl over there? What holds us sometimes from doing that is, our perception of the self-concept of others. It doesn't look cool. Oh, she's not my type. You haven't talked at all. But there is always development of self-concept. Now, your self-reflection can help you develop and refine your self-concept, which will contribute also to your self-development. So self-concept includes your thoughts, your traits, abilities, beliefs, values, your roles, your relationships, and it plays quite an influential role in your moods, in your judgment, and your patterns of actions and behavior. So when self-reflection becomes unhealthy, it sounds like self-reflection is always good, but there are times where self-reflection is actually bad. And you can see the list on the screen. Some people, when they reflect, they end up worse than they started. So what happened? Because in their self-reflection, they employed a very bad cookie cutter of negative thinking. So they're reflecting and they're making themselves feel bad. And they're reflecting and they're ruminating over the negatives. Well, tell me, what has happened to you when you ruminated over stuff that is negative? So this idea of, sit yourself and remember what happened is not good on its own. It's how you remember what happened. It's how you begin to discover who you are. The how is key, because if you sit yourself regularly and self-reflect in this way, you're going to hurt yourself. You see that? You can appreciate that? So unhealthy self-judgment, negative self-talk, self-criticism, comparison, and obviously, as I said, rumination at the beginning.
What does rumination?
When you sit and you keep thinking about the same thing over and over and over and over, that's rumination. It's almost compulsive in the way you're thinking. Self-reflection now for readiness in a relationship. Two things that I want to speak about when we think of self-reflection as it prepares you for a relationship. Emotional maturity and stability, and understanding the needs and expectations in a relationship. So basically, emotional maturity and stability, you get signs that include the ability to manage emotions, understanding and expressing your needs in a healthy way, and coping with stress without externalizing it onto others. Understanding the needs and expectations, when you reflect on yourself, you begin to understand what you're seeking in a relationship, including your values, your goals, your preferences, and it helps in aligning your relationship with a suitable partner that fits who you think You are. Okay? After reflection. So let's talk about emotional maturity and stability. So emotional maturity is crucial for healthy relationships. Of course. And it's not about never feeling negative emotions. Like if I'm emotionally stable, that means I never have a negative feeling. That's not true. You won't be human if you don't have a negative feeling when there is a need for a negative feeling. Even sometimes people are hard on themselves, and when they're hard on themselves, they have negative feelings. Well, it's understandable. If you're thinking bad about yourself, it is normal to have a negative feeling, right? So, but about how you handle them, that's the key. So, key signs of emotional maturity include those 3 points you see here. Yes?
So, when in being self-critical and looking at yourself, as looking at the basis of how that's how I confident
Yeah, you need to be critical in the sense that you need to be, I prefer a word, assessing. You need to be evaluating. But critical, it means that you're always looking at what is not working. And how you do that can be problematic, or it can be actually a good motivation. So I'd say when you're critical of yourself, you also have to be compassionate towards yourself. If you can combine those two voices together, then you have an evaluation, but it's done in a way that builds you, it doesn't put you down or destroy you. So the how, again, the cookie cutter is key. So you have here ability to manage emotions. So if you are emotionally mature, or through reflection, you're becoming more emotionally mature and stable, how did you reach that? You guys tell me. How will you, give me an example of how to have the ability to manage your emotions? Maybe you've seen it in a friend, maybe you've experienced it. How were you able, or what's an example of someone who has the ability or is building the ability to manage their emotions?
experience.
Give me an example. Yeah, put it in a
Can I-
full
can I maybe
sentence.
combine it?
Combine everything if you want, yes.
Whether it be one's stress tolerance or one's ability to navigate their emotions calmly, you need to be expressed to those emotions and kind of learn a healthy way that works, whether or not you see it in people around you. There's no way that you're going to, for example, raise your stress tolerance without exposing yourself to excessive amounts of stress and solving the problem, or your emotions without communicating with somebody. If I could give you a small example.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
I love examples.
All-
It's going to
all
be
of us-
easier to understand.
All of us come out of our homes with a certain amount of toxic characteristics and emotional immaturity that is passed on from maybe our families. And maybe in your first relationship, if it's also the other person's first relationship, I see it as kind of like maybe two grinding wheels, where like, okay, that's something that I didn't grow up with, that's not what okay, and you do that back and forth, and it's through that experience you learn, okay, maybe we shouldn't be talking 24/7, or maybe I shouldn't be concerned about whatever the trait may be.
Right. And how would self-reflection and self-awareness help you with something like this? So how would you gain the ability to manage these toxicities that you left home with, let's say?
If you don't reflect, nothing will change.
So it's a starting point.
I think
No, I agree. Any other thoughts on this? Thank you, Mina. Yes.
I would say you pray about it.
And when you pray about it, what do you do?
Like, you pray, you let it out. You let out, you tell God how you feel about this certain situation that makes you angry, for instance.
So what are you doing when you're talking to God? Obviously, God is hearing you, and God will be sending you His grace to do what? To change you without you? Is that what we think God does? He changes us without us doing anything? At least that's not our orthodox understanding of how grace works, right? Grace works in our, or through and with our involvement, right? We have to be involved somehow. Yeah, okay. Yes,
I say being proactive helps rather than reactive with emotions.
right. And self-reflection, I think, could be a state of being. Now we're talking about doing self-reflection, but eventually it becomes a state of being. You're almost always reflecting, and actually it reaches a point of not being reflective, being reflexive. You know the difference? Reflexive is just after the matter you think. Reflexive is as it's happening, you're noticing, right? And the more reflective you are, the more reflexive you become. Let's look at Natalie and John. That's a case here. So John is 28. He's a 28-year-old software developer who has been in a relationship with his fiancée Natalie for 3 years. They often have to navigate the stresses of day-to-day life while maintaining the relationship. John has a high-pressure job, and on this particular day, he faced multiple deadlines and a challenging meeting with his boss, which left him feeling particularly frustrated and on the edge. Village edge. Yes. The situation.
Maybe
In edge, yes. The situation. Upon returning to his house, his home, Natalie calls John, excited to go out for dinner as they had planned, and meet him to discuss her day and some plans she has been making for the weekend. However, John is still processing his stressful day and feels a surge of irritation when Natalie immediately starts talking about additional plans, fearing it might add more to his already high stress levels. Before this moment, John's usual response might have been to react with short, dismissive comments or to express his stress in a way that could potentially hurt Natalie's feelings, leading to unnecessary conflict between the two of them. However, John has been working on his emotional intelligence and recognizes the importance of managing his feelings for the health of his relationship with Natalie. Action taken. Instead of reacting immediately to Natalie with his current state of frustration, John explains calmly that he has had a challenging day and he needs a moment to unwind and to process his feelings or emotions before they can discuss plans or go out. Versus John before, you want to go out? Okay, let's go. But he's not there. And his feelings are all negative, and she's not aware. Then he suggests taking a short walk. He says, I'm going to go outside to clear his head and practice some deep breathing exercises that he has found quite helpful in the past to just manage his stress. So he goes out and walks and just does this deep breathing exercise. And he takes a 20-minute walk during which he focuses on controlling his thoughts and understanding what has happened. And he tries to mentally separate the stress of his workday from his personal life. So he reminds himself that his frustration is not related to Natalie or their plans for the weekend, but stems actually from his work situation and what happened with his boss. It's interesting how we have to remind ourselves of these simple truths, right? Like very, very simple and very little, but we tend to forget them. What's the outcome? John feels significantly calmer and more present. He speaks to Natalie and thanks her for giving him a moment or a time for himself. He expresses his appreciation for her understanding. And then they sit down together. John listens attentively to Natalie, who shares her excitement and the plans that she has. He engages in a conversation with her with enthusiasm, and he contributes ideas. He is not cold. He is not present. He is quite there. And he also expresses excitement about the plans because he was excited about the plans anyways before the day turned bad. They end up having a productive discussion about their weekend plans, finding a balance that respects both John's needs for some time alone and relaxation, and he recognizes that and asks for it, and Natalie's desire for plans and activities and outing. So here is an example. What do we learn from this case scenario? Tell me. What have you learned?
Communication is key.
Communication is key, but communication starts with whom first? With me. Right? So the importance of self-awareness, John recognized his emotional state. He recognized that something is going on with him, and in order for him to do that, he had to reflect. And he also recognized how he might impact Natalie if he's not careful. He also recognized his mood and his feelings and the thoughts that are still in his mind. He recognized these, and then he was able to effectively communicate his need to Natalie. You know what? I know we're supposed to go out. I would love to, but today was a very difficult day at work. I just need 20 minutes. I need to go out. I just, get rid of that stuff outside. And then when we meet, I'll be here. So that's effective communication. What else do we learn from this case scenario?
The importance of being able to identify whatever emotions or bad thoughts or negative
Right.
actions.
Be able to identify them and name them. Yes. What has John done? So I identify him in a bad mood. I know where it's coming from. I know how it will impact others, like Natalie. Then I know what I need. And then what? If it stops there, we haven't really solved the issue.
You kind of need to create an action plan to get out of that.
Exactly. He has self-regulation strategies. How do I self-regulate? How did he learn that? He must have read something. He must have reflected on something. He went back to his experience with breathing. Oh, I know this has worked in the past. Then it will work again. And this is self-awareness. Are you aware what works with you when you're upset? Are you aware of what doesn't work? All that stuff is important. And also another thing is, it's in our hand. When we self-reflect, it's in our hand to prevent conflict. He actually saved the day in the sense that he knew he had a choice to make. And how did he know he has a choice to make? Again, through self-awareness and reflection. And he exerted that choice. Okay. Understanding and expressing one's needs in a healthy way. Did you have something to say?
If there's a stumbling block that keeps happening, maybe a certain person, certain trigger, if you have to call it that or so.
Yep, trigger.
And it just gets you.
Yes.
If that's a consistent thing,
Yes.
and even though you feel like you've done reflection and you can understand the patterns and so,
Right.
but you keep tripping,
Yep.
is that still considered a lack of self-reflection?
Not necessarily lack of self-reflection, but maybe I need the right tools. I need the right resource. I may go and buy a self-help book on this and read it. If it works and I use some of the tools, great. If it doesn't, then I may consider a counselor, speaking to a therapist, getting someone to hold me accountable and help me with a game plan, right? And so on. But it's an indication something else is needed. Self-reflection is kind of like the starting point. So let's look at understanding and expressing one's needs in a healthy way. We have Maria and Alex. Maria is a 26-year-old graphic designer, has been feeling disconnected from her partner Alex, a 27-year-old teacher. They have been together for 2 years and share a deep emotional bond. However, recently, due to Alex's increased workload at school and Maria's freelance projects, They have found less time to spend together. Maria feels the gap growing between them, but is keen on bridging it through constructive efforts. So what's the situation? Over the past few months, Maria has noticed a decline in the quality and quantity of time she and Alex have been spending together. Initially, she felt hurt and somewhat neglected, interpreting Alex's busyness as a sign of dwindling interest in the relationship. Maria remembered advice from a relationship workshop she had attended in the past, emphasizing the importance of open communication about one's needs without resorting to blame or accusations, which can lead to defensiveness and conflict, and she knew that this was her old cycle. This is how she was in the past. Action taken. Instead of letting her feelings fester or accusing Alex of neglect, Maria decided to approach the situation proactively. She chose a quiet evening, free from work distractions, in order to talk to Alex. Maria began the conversation by expressing her love and appreciation for the relationship and acknowledging the hard work they both have been putting into their careers. She then calmly and clearly communicated her feeling of disconnection and her desire for more quality time together. She suggested implementing regular date nights as a way to ensure they both prioritize the relationship despite the fact that they have busier schedules. She proposed that they could alternate planning the date nights, making it an exciting and shared responsibility. And she emphasized that this was not about blaming Alex. She emphasized this is not about blaming Alex for their lack of time together, but about finding a solution that would work for the both of them. So what does Alex do? Alex listened attentively, expressed gratitude to Maria for bringing her feelings to his attention in such a nice and kind manner. He admitted to feeling the strain as well, but hadn't known how to address it. The conversation opened up a dialogue between the two of them about priorities in the relationship and how they could better balance the relationship with their professional lives. So they end up agreeing on scheduling weekly date nights and also decided to set aside time each night to connect, even if just for a few minutes, to share their day's experiences. This proactive approach significantly improved the relationship, bringing them closer and ensuring that they both felt valued and heard. So tell me, what do you see in this scenario that shows an understanding and an expression of one's needs in a healthy way?
It's not, even though it's about understanding and expressing your needs healthily, you're not doing it unilaterally, you're incorporating also the other person without, for lack of a word, commenting on them.
Right.
I have this wrong with me, I need this, but from what I understand, that they also incorporated the other person in how they can proactively solve it together.
Nice. So she's not coming to dictate anything, she's coming to collaborate. And in order to do that, she has recognized what's going on with herself and not just, she didn't come to Alex and say, hey, you never spend time with me anymore. Because we usually tend to do this. We come to people and we put our problems on them, rather than recognize, hey, I contribute to this somehow, or at least I can contribute to the solution and not complicate things further. But how do I get there? How do I know this? I know this by stopping myself, reflecting, becoming self-aware, and also most likely empathize and be aware of what my partner or the other person might be going through as well. So that's good. I'm not going to dwell too much on that. There's clearly, she asked it in a non-blaming tone of voice, in a nice way. She appreciated, the sandwich technique, huh? Yeah, you can do it one time only. After that, everyone knows about it, right? But there are other techniques. Maybe sometime I'll let you. There are 2 or 3 other techniques. Very hard to discover, but they do deliver the message in a way that becomes soft and yet clear. But the sandwich technique, it's nice to say, oh, you're wonderful, but don't say but, okay? Let's just say, you're wonderful, and by the way, there's that, and then you close by wonderful again, huh? That's the sandwich technique.
I was going to say, could you.
Yeah, so sandwich technique. So something nice about you that I really appreciate, and it's true and authentic. And then what I want to tell you, really, and then close with something that I really appreciate about you. So you can do it 1 or 2 times. After that, as soon as you start saying, "Oh, you are amazing," say, "Okay, come. Okay, what's the meat?"
It's too many arsehole.
Yeah. So the sandwich technique has been discovered. Um, uh, because it's easy to discover, but there are other techniques, very nice ones. But it's not our topic tonight. Coping with stress without externalizing it onto others. Again, very similar to the example, but here is David. David faces a tough situation. Instead of lashing out at his partner, he actually engages in stress relieving activities like jogging or meditation, and then he discusses his feelings openly. So, personal stress management. How do you know that you need personal stress management unless you really reflect and you look at the stressors in your life? When sometimes we talk about how is our schedule, we say, "Oh, we're very busy." Well, are you aware of your busyness? Are you aware of what that looks like? Is it productive busyness or is it unproductive busyness? Is it busy over things that you can cross out of your schedule? Or those are essential things? Again, it involves self-reflection and self-awareness. Understanding the needs and expectations. So understanding your own needs and expectations, in the examples I gave were, Alex knew, Natalie understood, and so on. So it's like these people, John and Natalie, Alex and Maria, and many other examples where people become aware of what they need and what they do expect. Yes, Sarah.
Question. So let's say Maria says all of that, but then Alex says, "No, I'm just too busy. Like I can't do date night." How does one do that?
Yeah, so I can say I don't handle this very well. We enter into now some more communication because Alex may need to be more self-reflective as well. In this case was Maria, right? Maria was very self-reflective, and she can say, "Well, it all depends how he answered that. If he answered it sincerely, I'm so busy, I don't even know. I feel like this is another task I have to do." Say, I am sure you're very busy. Let's talk about that. How do you feel about how your schedule is? And maybe kind of put her requests a little bit aside and open Alex up to speak a little bit more. That doesn't mean that Alex will always respond favorably, right? But at least she's aware of what's going on, and hopefully she can encourage him to maybe reflect on what's going on with his busy schedule that's making and say, "So are you okay with how busy the schedule is? Tell me how you feel about it." Versus, "So are you okay?" You say the same words, but it's said differently. "So are you okay with being busy and not going out on a date?" Versus, "So how do you feel about this, having a busy schedule? Because I know how I feel about mine, but just how are things going with you?" And to show a keen interest. And the person might say, "It sucks. I hate it, but what can I do?" I'll say, "Okay, well, what have you been doing in order to kind of de-stress? Because you're my partner, I don't want to lose you in the process." So there could be more things that can happen. At the end of the day, Alex has to make the choice, but she's inviting him. Versus, so she's facilitating a better response, but she's not dictating it. She's just facilitating it. So he's most likely to respond in a positive way, but it's not guaranteed. Yeah.
I feel like there needs to be a disclaimer in that situation in a way because it's great for like a first time thing where maybe you're talking to like your good love friends or a relation or something like that where like you're understanding and everything, but if the person is not cooperative, like and they're like, "Oh yeah, for sure, I agree with you," and then it just kind of keeps on happening, I think the other person starts to become frustrated, and then that's when they flip to, not being understanding, "Oh, you're so wonderful," but because I feel like that's kind of like you're kind of on eggshells, if you're like walking on eggshells and
Right.
you're always trying to.
So then understanding your frustration, then let's say you're that person, understanding your frustration. Why are you frustrated? What makes you frustrated? Is it the fact that you that your needs are not being met? Or do you understand what's going on with the other person? Or you have certain expectations, I can let go of 2, 3 times, but my expectation I'm not going to let go of the 5th time.
Yeah.
So this is that we're talking about self-awareness and self-reflection. So it's very important that so what's making me frustrated? You say, Abuna, it's trivial, I'm frustrated. Well, no, that's not going to help you. And then if you're frustrated because you really long for this person, well, maybe have you said that? Well, no, I mean, like, I don't want to say that, and then he continues not showing interest, then I'm going to be hurt more. Well, yeah, sure. So are you aware you can become vulnerable? Can you be assertive about that? Okay, and so on. So there's so much that can come out of you just reflecting and becoming more aware of what's going on with you, which will open a door for you to also become more aware of what's going with someone else and help them to be aware of what's going with them.
I'm sorry, how can you be assertive about being vulnerable?
So how can you be assertive about being vulnerable? I mean, how can you be...
How do you actually communicate and act that way?
Being vulnerable is being vulnerable, right? But some people become vulnerable, but they're also protective of their feelings as they're becoming vulnerable. So they're not becoming vulnerable at a level 9, but they're becoming vulnerable at a level 5 or 6. So vulnerability is a spectrum, right? So I can, for example, in getting to know somebody, it takes an initial step. That initial step requires vulnerability, right? So preparing myself that I might come and ask so-and-so, if they are interested in going for a cup of coffee, and I know they might come back and say no. So I can prep myself, so I can protect myself. I can, even the way people ask each other out, doesn't it tell you that they are being, like they're calculating their vulnerability on how they ask? They say, so you don't go to someone and say, hey, I'm interested in you, can we go out? Well, why don't you say that? You want to say that. Why don't you say that? Because you're protecting yourself. But you're still being a little bit vulnerable by asking for, hey, would you like to have a cup of coffee? Apparently, a cup of coffee is less vulnerable. Right? It's less vulnerable. It's less, so you can, and also, when you become reflective and self-aware, you also can become more self-confident. Which means is, I'm okay to become vulnerable because whatever you will do, I have learned that it won't scar me. I have made those, what I grew, we're going to talk about maturity, where you reach certain points where it's, it's okay. It's like when you're young, you stand up in front of a class, you're very aware of self, and you're wondering, in grade 8 or grade 9, what people are saying about you. But when you're an adult and giving talks, sometimes it doesn't matter that much what happened. You become more self-confident. So you're vulnerable, but it's not without the work to protect you. Okay, understanding needs and expectations. So here reflecting on personal values and goals. So Emma values career growth and seeks a partner who not only respects but supports her ambitions. She looks for qualities like encouragement and independence in a partner. So when you know your core values, you value your career. You value, and just an example, Emma in this example, she values her career. When she meets up people, that value is always where? Always in the conscious level, so that she can see whether the partner she's meeting up with is going to align with those values she has or not. Versus usually, we do what when we connect with someone? We connect with what first?
Useless small talk.
It's useless small talk, okay. Yeah, well, and sometimes we go with our feelings without, thinking, okay, does this person really align with my values? Why do we have people who are meeting up with others who may not hold their same faith? what's going on? Like you're a Christian, you come to church, and you care about God. You have a relationship with Christ, but all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where you're developing feeling towards a guy who is atheist.
Because you compromise and you expect the other person to change.
I don't know if you compromise. I think I want to take it one step back. You were not fully aware of your value. You did not put that in front of you as you were, because you didn't fall in love right away. Kept walking into the relationship, and you're doing it without self-reflection. You're not reflecting on what's going on. It's like people say, I fell in love, and we also always say, you don't fall in love. You walk into love. You don't fall in sin. You step into sin. Okay? But if I'm not aware of those steps, I'm not self-reflecting, therefore I'm not aware of those steps, I find myself in a situation, and then I come and I say, help, help, help. I need solutions to this problem. So this is where self-reflection, again, and being aware can be very important. Understanding what your values are and knowing your core values helps you in finding a partner who would align with your life goals or similar, leading to a more fulfilling relationship. Recognizing relationship preferences. So what's the difference between values and preferences?
Values are non-negotiable, preferences are negotiable.
Sure. Yes. Values are like principles, like deeply seated stuff that you have owned as your own values. Because that same scenario I mentioned about this guy or girl that found themselves into a relationship with someone who doesn't share their faith, the question comes back, did they really own their faith, per se? Or all of their faith? Or do they take part? We keep hearing and talking about open buffet Christianity, right? Where I take what pleases me and I leave the stuff that I don't like. Whereas, so again, that speaks of your values, speaks of what you believe in. But a preference is something you may adapt and change. But you still have some preferences. You still prefer X, Y, Z. And to be aware of that is important. So someone who prefers a relationship with lots of personal space and independence, understanding this, he communicates his preferences early on in the relationship to find partners who share similar expectations and would evaluate the relationship as such. Compatibility with partners' needs and expectations, aligning future goals and plans, and so on and so forth. So the takeaway message here in this part is self-reflection on emotional maturity and understanding personal needs and expectations. This is quite foundational for a healthy relationship or for relationship readiness. When Abu Nabutu spoke to me about this topic, really the key point was like, how important is self-reflection in order to prepare myself to be in a relationship with someone, to understand me before I connect with you. By managing emotions effectively, communicating needs in a healthy way, aligning with a partner's values and goals, individuals can indeed foster stronger, more fulfilling relationships. And these skills not only help in finding the right partner, but also in nurturing the relationship over time, in making the right partner always the right partner. There's this recent debate I was made aware of. Is there the one, or do you make the one? Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I won't answer it now. Personal baggage and insecurities. So part of when you reflect is you become aware of your own baggage. What Mina speaks about as toxicities, right? So identifying personal baggage. Recognizing, patterns from past relationships, unresolved issues, let's say from my childhood, or traumas that may affect current or future relationships. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you give an example of what I might be talking about?
Somebody was adulterous in a relationship in your past, let's say. So that might be an unresolved trauma.
Okay, that's an example. So let's look at Lisa. Lisa, a 30-year-old marketing consultant, has been through several relationships but struggles to maintain them beyond the initial few months. Despite her desire for a lasting connection, she finds herself sabotaging potential long-term relationships due to trust issues. What's the situation? After her trust was betrayed in a significant relationship 5 years ago, Lisa finds herself unable to fully trust new partners. She scrutinizes their actions, looking for signs of dishonesty or disinterest, which often leads to tension and conflict. She comes across as the jealous type. This pattern has left her feeling lonely and frustrated, questioning why she cannot seem to move past her defense stance in relationships. What's going on?
She's treating all the new guys as if they're the same guy that broke her trust, I guess.
And that makes sense or doesn't make sense?
Makes sense. Logically.
Who says makes sense? Who says makes sense?
She should learn.
Who says doesn't make sense?
Not about right or wrong, but
Okay.
it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Logically, it does make sense.
Makes sense. Logically. Okay, we understand she was burned before, right?
It's not rational.
You know the Egyptian saying اللي اتلسع من الشوربة ينفخ في الزبادي. So yeah, if you get burned drinking soup, when you actually come to eat yogurt, which is cold, you go like this. So what's going? Does this make sense when you see someone eating zabadi going? Huh? Now tell me, does it make sense? No. That's where the people who said it doesn't make sense, they're right as well. Because it's not making sense. Like if you're the guy that Lisa isn't trusting to you, it's like, this is not right, this is unfair, this doesn't make sense. I've shown her care. I have always been asking about her. I've done everything on my end because I'm the very attached type of a person, but she still cannot trust me. Well, why? Because it makes sense because she was burned in a previous relationship.
I think like different areas of the being, whether it's the physical, the mental, the psychological, or so, they all come into place. Some areas might still be holding on.
Yeah.
Some haven't been released.
So what do you tell someone like Lisa?
Say that she has to find someone that's trustworthy and learn to let go of those.
Surreal.
So, someone like he was discussing a theory with me, just the iceberg theory. So what's Lisa showing is something, and under the iceberg is a larger pattern of feelings and emotions from the last trauma and everything. So what should have been done is actually, okay, so just communication, then Lisa, okay, so I'm doing 1, 2, 3 regarding, and I'm just gonna set your expectation really quickly while I'm doing that and what I'm needing to do that. It's gonna take much time to solve all of these traumas and issues, however, that's the whole personality. So my personality that you love, that actually is adhering
On the outside.
regarding the iceberg, what's down.
So Lisa decides to seek therapy. Here's where I throw the word therapy. Therapy. You know, this is important depending on how deep this thing has gotten into her. She decided in this case to seek therapy to explore her trust issues. And through therapy, she begins to recognize the pattern of distrust and defensiveness. She begins to experience the cycle of mistrust and be aware of it. It's almost like she learned to step out of herself and look back, say, oh, this is how my mistrust begins with my current partner, who is amazing. But I'm triggered when this happens. She becomes self-aware. She brings and then she traces it back to the betrayal she has experienced. Her therapist helps her understand that her reactions, while protective, why is she doing this? Because she's protective, right? We're talking about vulnerability earlier. Also prevent her, the same actions that protect her actually prevent her from forming the close connections that she very well desires. So Lisa works on developing strategies. That's where she learns in therapy, develops strategies to manage her fears. Because what's actually being activated inside of her is fear. Fear is a very powerful emotion. So she finds herself being managed by fear, but learns strategies to manage her fear and her anxiety. Such as openly communicating her feelings with her partner, setting healthy boundaries, practicing self-soothing techniques. When she feels triggered, she also learns to differentiate between her past experiences and her current relationship, treating each new partner as an individual rather than assuming they will repeat her past experiences. Okay. Also, identifying personal baggage in terms of unresolved issues or trauma. Let's talk about Mark. Mark is a 28-year-old school teacher. He's experienced several short-lived relationships. He realizes that his intense fear of being left alone, which stems from being abandoned by a parent in childhood, causes him to form attachments too quickly with girls, often overwhelming his partners. So Mark's fear of abandonment triggers clingy behavior when he gets to know a girl, making him overly dependent on his partners for emotional support and validation. This dependence has led to the end of multiple relationships as partners feel suffocated by his needs and are unable to meet his constant demand for reassurance. Guess what? Every time Mark is going to enter into an intimate relationship, what's going to get triggered is his intimate relationship with his abandoning parent. Now, if he does not become aware of this or he doesn't reflect on this, being aware doesn't mean, oh, I know this comes from my mom. That's not being aware. This is just like, okay. But being aware is to really dig deeper and really peel the layers of what that actually means and how it's playing out now in your next intimate relationship with someone you want to be with. Understanding your triggers and your cycle and so on and so forth. So strategies for addressing insecurities. One is engaging in therapy, like we said earlier. Emily. So she's feeling insecure about her worth in relationships. That's common, where, guys or girls, they might feel insecure about themselves. Where she doubts her worth in relationship, she also starts to speak with a spiritual mentor. And through meeting with her spiritual mentor, she begins to gain insight into her self-worth and learns to navigate relationships more confidently. Again, sometimes we need a help. We need a mentor. We need a counselor. We need someone. Okay? You've been in a couple of relationships where this did not work and it always ends up the same way, is a good indication. You probably need a hand. It's good. That's why we exist, to give each other a hand. Okay, so that's important. Practicing mindfulness and self-compassion. Kevin, he adopts mindfulness practices to manage his anxiety. Well, how do you feel about the word mindfulness? How do you feel about the word yoga?
Different things.
Different things. Huh? The feelings have changed, right? So yoga, what has it produced inside of you? You don't know yet. You're trying to figure it out. Versus mindfulness. Yoga, of course, has its roots in Eastern religions, like the Buddhism and so on. So some of its components could be, actually will not be in line with our Christian faith. But part of yoga is breathing in and out. I think that's part of being human, in general, right? Every breath, let it praise the name of the Lord. Like, it's not every part of the exercise, but if you take it to its roots, yes, you may actually find that it's not matching your faith, and so you would not adopt it. But there are other ways to become mindful. What does the word mindfulness? What does it tell you? What is mindfulness?
Awareness.
Aware, being present. Thank you. Being the here and now. Often we are either reminiscing about the past or regretting and feeling ashamed of the past, or even being happy about the past. And so often we are very worried about the future, but we hardly and we often miss what? The now, the here. Right? So learning ways to be mindful, strategies to stay and grounded, in order to address the sense of insecurities. We'll talk a little bit about that in spiritual maturity, which is next. Seeking feedback and perspectives from trusted friends or mentors. This is the case of Sophia. Regularly discusses her relationship challenges with a close, mature friend, gaining different perspectives. Sometimes in a relationship, when you're not self-reflective, all you see is what you see. And in that, you miss the whole point. Because in a relationship, there is more than you. There's you and someone else, right? And so it's very important that someone I'm able to talk to can help me change lenses and see through someone else's perspective. So if you have someone who's close to you and a good friend and can really challenge your perspective, that's someone to hold on to, because they can help you really become more self-aware. Now, assessing and developing spiritual maturity, that's part of self-reflection as well. This is where I want to show you a functional definition of spiritual maturity. And this comes actually from a type of therapy called acceptance commitment therapy. Are you aware of ACT? Anyone here heard of ACT? You know, it's one of those things that I feel aligns so much with what we believe in as Christians. But I like it because it's very functional. It tells you spiritual maturity is about moving away from here and moving towards here. So it's one way to define spiritual maturity. Here, for example, you are right at the center. You're right here. What's going on here is yucky stuff that triggers you in your life. So give me an example of a trigger for someone. Just anything. Just tell me anything. Help me out here.
Desires.
Huh?
Desires.
So desires, but how do the desires get triggered?
By like being in a society that's
Pressures you.
exactly, yeah.
Right. So let's say you get triggered. Let's say you get triggered about your self-worth. Okay? Let's take something easier, a little self-worth. What triggers someone to think less of themselves? Looking at a magazine, looking at the pressures of the world, at the perfect guy. Did you guys know that everyone has six-pack? You know this? Yeah? Okay. But you look at this magazine, and it looks like the first time you look at a six-pack. Okay, say, wow, like I'm not worth it. Or a girl looks at a magazine and she says, you know what, I wish I was that beautiful. She gets triggered. And when she gets triggered by this little monster, she ends up doing things to relieve her yuckiness or his yuckiness. We call this maladaptive behavior. Like what? So I get triggered that I'm not worth it. What do you think I could do in order to relieve my yuckiness? Yes?
Junk food.
Junk food. I go and emotionally eat. Right? And so most people who are not mature, spiritually, I say spiritually mature, and I'll tell you why I say spiritually, they live in this matrix, in this two ends of the quadrants. They get triggered, they live maladaptive behavior. The more they live maladaptive behavior, the more they get triggered. The more they're triggered, the more they do maladaptive behavior. And the life is spent here. Spiritual maturity is about noticing. Is about me right here. I am triggered. You know, I really hate that magazine. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't look physically as well as. And I'm aware I don't feel good about me right now. And I'm aware that I've been for the last X number of years been solving this yuckiness this way. You see, I'm noticing. But before I go there now, I ask myself something very important. Who's important to me? And what are my faith-based values and principles? So I become aware of my triggers. I'm not avoiding them by maladaptive behavior. I am maturing to realize, hold on, who's important to me? And I might say, well, who's important to me? God is important to me. I'm a Christian. I believe God is very important to me. And not only He is important to me, I am important to me. And not only that, I have values. What are my values? My values, and I'm not going to go very spiritual on you here, huh? My values is I want to look better. Or I value exercise. I value healthy eating. You say, okay, now that I know that my value is this, what type of action can I do that is congruent with my values? A spiritually mature person is a person whose life reflects their beliefs. Isn't that what we say? A spiritually mature person is someone who's living out the faith. We say it. Now, this depiction of what I've just said just tells you got to notice what's going on. And then you're at the fork of a road. You're right here in the middle. Either you go this way, or you become more mindful of your values. You become more mindful of who's important. You become more mindful of your principles and say, these are values, right? Like they're not made values, they are values to you. Then say, okay, if I want to live that value, then I need to go to the gym. If I want to live that value, I need to eat a healthy, meal. If I want to live that value, I want to, pray. I want to go to church. I want to be a kinder person. I'm going to do X, Y. Actions that are congruent with my values. A lot of people live incongruent lives. Actually, here, us in this room, I invite you to look into where you're living a life of contradiction. All the time. All the time. And to be aware of that comes from self-reflection. Because when I said to myself, where is it that I'm in contradiction with what I believe? And then I have a choice. This way or that way. I'm noticing. Yes?
It might kind of be off track a bit on the line for the past few slides. So say if somebody is starting to date or so, and they're working on congruence and going to the right side. We read things about the Bible, forgive 70 times 77
Yes.
times or so. And so there's always room to work within and purify. Always room for spiritual growth.
Yes.
The same can be said about the other person. So in theory, anybody, given that they work long enough, can be suitable because eventually they'll both be spiritually mature in
Sure.
that sense that they can met. So where is like the line in the sand? Because I can flip a coin and just pick anybody and eventually marry them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way to approach it.
Sure. So if you're talking, then there is a point of idealism, which we're not going to reach. You won't find that. So you know the line is not there. But maybe the line is in whether this is happening or could be happening or not. This is a process. So if you find someone who likes the process, if you find someone who's doing the process, great. If you find someone who is open to the process of spiritual maturity, which most people in general are, but they don't know how. This is a map. This is an example. Why I chose this specifically. This is not the only definition of spiritual maturity, but I chose this one because it's functional. So you have someone who's open to that, then maybe that's an inclusion criteria, right? So you find, and some people struggle. I find that people who struggle are good candidates because they're struggling. If they stop struggling or they don't struggle at all, they're not even trying. right? Yeah. So I want to really stop at that. We spoke about self-reflection. We spoke about, the aligning of values. We spoke about becoming self-aware, our triggers, knowing how to learn from our past experiences, learning from issues that have happened, previous relationships that have happened, becoming, aware of how our emotions are and how our thoughts are, our desires, our expectations of self and others. And all this kind of be summarized into the spiritual definition of spiritual maturity that you see here in a functional way where I become noticing. This is about being mindful, by the way. The key word here, honestly, is here, right here, noticing. And the second key word is, what are you noticing? Obviously, you're noticing this, but you're not avoiding this, because when you run to avoid the yuckiness, you end up where? Here. Okay? I'm not afraid of the yuckiness. I'm not going to try and avoid the yuckiness, but I'm actually going to move to ask myself, despite the yuckiness, what is it that I value? I am here grounding myself in something very important to me. And then I ask myself, what can I do to be congruent in my actions and what I value, and move towards those actions rather than those actions. ACT, by the way, is a form of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I just love this so much because I see a lot of alignment with our faith in it. That's why I'm very drawn to it, and it's easy to use. It's easy to, but it requires training. Like, to be mindful, you get training on being mindful. And even spiritual training on how to be mindful, all the talk on self-awareness and self-reflection. Then not being afraid of the yuckiness and not avoiding it. What they call is flexibility. I'm flexible. Flexible, not that I'm okay with the yuckiness, but I'm okay. It's not making me run away from it by jumping into whatever ruins my life and gives me relief. Like people who actually go here, it makes sense to them. But on the short term, it might make sense because they're running away from the yuckiness by going to eat and pleasing themselves a little bit because of their low self-esteem. But on the long run, it's just a vicious negative cycle. Then I become aware of who I am, what the church has taught me, what my spiritual mentor have taught me, spiritual fathers, my servants, what I believe, what my values are, and then I become living a life that is in line with what I believe in. And this will come out of self-reflection. And it will produce someone who is now also readier and readier and readier for a relationship with someone else. Your thoughts? I'm going to stop here. There's another 15 slides. We'll leave them for another day. This is a good place to stop. And I had positioned this to be, like when you take a break in a movie, one of those long movies. So that's one. Thoughts or questions? Yes.
When I was at the beginning of self-concept, and you said that if I understood it correctly, that it could be an accumulation of what we receive from the outside, or this contributes to the self-concept. And then you said that self-reflection is important to fix this.
Yeah.
Where will self-reflection bring positivity into the negative that's inside? Where will it bring it from?
Where will it bring it from?
Like, how will my self-reflection be different from my self-concept that is based on what I receive, for example,
Hopefully I understand your question. It's like you're asking, how does it actually work? Is that what you're asking? How does the self-reflection actually work for me to work and repair my self-concept?
I think I mean, where does it draw from to bring positivity that will change the self-concept?
So it can draw from many different places. If a person is a Christian, it can draw from their faith, right? But if a person is a non-believer even, it can draw from the natural laws that God has created the world in and humans with. And that's sometimes when we speak with a non-believer, quoting the Bible to them may not help them at the beginning because they don't believe in the Word of God, but asking them how this is working or not working for them. Because it could be, and often it is, it's not working for them. So, and you're self-confident that you are, for example, you're a doormat. You grew up, it's like anything can be put on you. It's okay. Your brothers and sisters, they can just do whatever they want to do, but you can't. You have to accept, So, does it sit okay with you? God created you in such a way that this is not going to sit well with you. And it will show through unfolding things in your life that are negative. So people can actually recognize that there's something not right with this label, but I've been living it. And I've been accepting it because I learned it very early on. But now what makes them wake up is now it's not working. It worked in the past because you as a child, you were safe, secure, no one really bothered you because you accepted everything, so you're not in the conflict. But now as you're entering, let's say, to form a relationship with someone, it's causing you a lot of issues. Maladaptive. It's maladaptive, yes. It's a childhood, let's say, behavior that helped you survive, was useful back then, but it's actually not useful now. So you can tell sometimes just by natural, the fact that you're human, created by the hands of God in the image of God. And others can draw from their faith. They can correct their wrong self-concept through the Word of God. That's why we always say being a Christian, you're at such a great advantage. Because not only do you have the Word of God, not only do you have the correct self-concept, you have the image of God with you restored. And so inside of you, there's always going to be a vivid conflict. Yeah. Yes?
Forgive me, I had a question about something that you mentioned somewhat early on, some of the early principles about the importance of self-awareness, and one of the benefits is being able to foster independence and interdependence. How do you measure a healthy balance between the two for yourself, for oneself, and I guess I know one of the examples also mentioned the importance of someone having a sense of independence. I guess what are some of the, for lack of a better word, red flags with having too much independence or being too independent? I was wondering if folks could shed some light on that.
So the first part was, how do you recognize this? How do you know?
And how do you strike a balance?
How do you strike a balance between being dependent and independence, or interdependence? So dependence, interdependence is kind of the one in the middle. That's the balance. Is you're being interdependent. You're independent and dependent, depending on the situation, right? I don't know if I can put something up again here. This is one of the things that I had as tools at the end. I will show it here. We can. Have you heard of the Johari window?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this up. Hopefully I can. One way to do self-awareness is through an exercise called using the Johari window. It's quite helpful, but I don't know if I can connect. Okay, it doesn't like my computer anymore. So, when you do a self-reflection through something like the Johari window, you look at a quadrant again. So, what is known to you, what is not known to you, what is known to others, what is not known to others.
If you don't mind, is that about yourself as well, or?
Yeah, so what do you know about you, known to self about you, and what's not known to self is not known to you. But then you have other people. This is the key to the answer, is that there are other people that can come into the picture here that known to others and not known to others. You can actually do the reflection on your own, or you can ask someone to give you feedback, like they do the 360 feedback, where you ask. This is where a spiritual mentor is helpful. This is where, when you sit and speak with a friend who can give you a new perspective or a different perspective, can become helpful, right? But anyways, the nice thing about the Johari, the Johari window, yes, it's open area, blind spot, unknown, hidden area. So known to self, known to others. This is the open you. Okay, you know it, people know it. So let's say you get very frustrated and you snap. So people know that you snap, and you know you snap. Okay, not known to self, but known to others. Okay, you're a very sensitive person, but no, you say I'm not sensitive. Whether you're in denial or you don't know it, but this is your blind spot. How do you know? It's when other people that you trust, you engage them in the self-reflection of yours. And you're open to this blind spot to kind of discover what's going on there. And it usually comes by asking a question. In our social gathering today, did you notice that I was shy, or that I was over talkative, or stuff that you may doubt or people have told you before, but now you're asking someone who really can give you an answer. Known to self, not known to others, this is your hidden area. This is information about you that you know, but others don't know. And then you have not known to self, not known to others, unknown area. And that exists. But through self-reflection, you can make this one smaller. And you can make this one smaller. Right? And you can enlarge this. So the whole idea of the Johari window is how to enlarge the open area. Of course, there will always be stuff about you that you know that other people don't know. But at least your blind spots and your unknown, they can shrink. I don't know if this helps with the answer.
And sorry, I just say known or unknown. Are you talking about characteristics, or talking about behavior, or everything, or
anything that you know about yourself, whether it be the way you act or feel, or moods or desires or expectations. Maybe some people say, you always expect this. Oh, I didn't know that I always expect this. Or, oh yeah, I know I expected this. And so it's whether it be anything about you. And there are other tools such as journaling. So if you're thinking, okay, Abuna, do you have a tool for us that can help us become more self-aware? Say something that the church has always taught us to do, which is what? Journaling. People go spend the week in a monastery, come back, and you look and they all started journaling. Well, they have so much time on their hands, it seems, in the monastery, and they're reflecting on paper, and they're writing things or typing things on their phones, but journaling, and you can get guided journaling. But if you want to jump into journaling or reflecting, it's called reflecting in writing. Reflecting in writing, just open up your laptop and put your hands on the keyboard and just begin to write anything that comes to your mind. Did you hear this? Anything that comes into your mind. And then bit by bit, you're going to begin to actually write what's meaningful over time.
Another tip I hear, it has an extra effect of like physically moving in.
You could. Yeah.
Even the way you write and like how clear or how swift.
Whatever works for you, yes. Sometimes writing becomes inconvenient that it doesn't happen. So typing can be okay. Whatever works for you. But like I said, you want to reflect in writing, first start by writing every day for like 3-4 minutes, anything that comes to your mind. Just like that. And then eventually you're gonna see, you're gonna experience this. You're actually gonna be typing meaningful stuff. Or you're gonna be writing meaningful stuff. Other thoughts? Glory be to God forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
Yeah.